Hello, everyone, and welcome to a belated episode of Gaius Grimoire. It's been 2 months, but that was because of a whole host of things. I'm not going to waste time getting into that, but I do plan on getting this little podcast back on track. And I'm going to start with a topic involving something I've never really seen in role playing, or actually, rather, that I haven't seen a lot of. And that's body horror in role playing. And now I can, well, the 1 out of the 5 people who actually post in the comments may be going, wait, but I've done this and I've seen this. There is body horror in it. I think there's an Aliens role playing game. I know if you're playing Pathfinder, one of your friends can get, infected by Intellect Devour. And if I know in the Malleus Maleficarum, there's basically a thing from another world, the serial numbers filed off for Call of Cthulhu. But you never really get into that. There's never really a point where you can create the body horror that you want. Because when you play Aliens, for example, everyone's expecting for the chestburster moment. You know what I'm saying? Everyone knows that it's coming. Everyone knows that face hugger equals alien chest baby. It's a lot like if you play a zombie game, any host of zombie games, where you, though you don't want to metagame it, you know in the back of your mind, and therefore a lot of times you sort of put that into your character, that bite or scratch equals infected equals zombie. So I think there's a lot of games now coming out for the zombie genre, or at least there's a few, that'll basically tell you Romero doesn't exist in this universe. You don't get the handy-dandy guide to how to deal with a zombie. Or John Carpenter doesn't exist in this universe. So you don't get the handy-dandy guide to deal with the assimilating alien. Or you don't get the guide to what happens when a alien impregnates your face, and so on and so forth. So that's there are elements of body horror in games. But it comes down to how people want to play it. Because if you want to look at World of Darkness, you don't really meet a lot of vampires in World of Darkness that are necessarily afraid of being turned into lawn furniture by flesh crafting, or being turned into an abomination by flesh crafting, or something like that. So a lot of games have body horror elements, but they're so rare that players don't even fear them, or rather, the characters could rarely fear them, and maybe you shouldn't fear them, because if you think about it, let's be honest, reality. I'm talking about the real world. There's no body horror in the real world. There's rarely body horror in the real world. Maybe like a bloat fly living inside of you, or a parasite, or one of those, something from those Monster Inside Me National Graphic documentaries, stuff like that. That's body horror in terms of something is living inside of you that is foreign. But when you take it into fiction, it goes in a whole nother level. You have the John Carpenter Thing. You have the xenomorph aliens leaping out of you. If you play Space Station 13, and especially if you role-play Space Station 13, a little indie game, a changeling. The priest, the janitor, the captain that you befriended this whole time is a shape-shifting, super strong alien that will crush your windpipe and then drain out your fluids. This is the sort of stuff that makes me think. Let's go back to an earlier example. I am working on a little Call of Cthulhu project right now, where one of the enemies that I'm potentially kicking around is an Intellect Devourer. So taking that Intellect Devourer out of the Pathfinder D&D fantasies and importing it into Call of Cthulhu. An idea actually inspired, because if you go back and watch The Gentleman Gamer, he does, I think he's done 2 Pathfinder Bestiary reviews. I think it's his first one where he just starts rolling through, or flipping through rather. I don't know why I said rolling. Flipping through the bestiary, and he's like, oh, well, I landed on the Lich, and one of the things he lands on is Intellect Devour. And he says, well, this could work a Call of Cthulhu game even. So I said, oh, okay. And I'm thinking about how, if and how I do that. But the Intellect Devour, like, that's a unique method, especially if you know what it is. Because if you don't know what it is, it's a brain on little reptilian lion-like legs. It's a quadrupedic lizard that, instead of a body, has a brain, or a body like a brain, rather, and a tongue, kind of like a serpent. That's Darwinism for you, however the hell that thing evolved. But, and what it is, if you don't know what it is, it would shrink down to minute sizes. It would be able to not just compress itself in the rodent sort of way, but it would be able to mystically shrink. And burrow inside a host by entering some sort of orifice, primarily in the facial head region. Although, I guess it could like any orifice for this thing to go into. And it basically, as its name suggests, it would devour the brain and then expand to fill the skull. And I guess it would connect itself to the brainstem somehow, whatever's left. And not only gain the subject knowledge that it possesses, but be able to puppeteer the body for, depending on which version of it you have, either for a certain amount of time before it needs to find a new host, or, as long as the DM or the ST needs it to go. So here's the thing. The body horror that we do get, which is rare in itself, tends to be your either your franchises that everyone knows, the Galians, the Romero zombies, the John Carpenter's The Thing, so on. And because everyone knows them, like I don't believe there is a Thing from Another World or a John Carpenter Thing RPG, but as I said, thanks to the Malaris account, you could put one in a Call of Cthulhu game, or, take the G100 system, whose name is currently eluding me, and sort of say, okay, well, I want to run a space opera, or a realistic Dead Space aliens sort of sci-fi, and when you end up on the old potato ship that travels between the stars shipping potatoes, you come across, and they meet John Carpenter's The Thing, with the serial numbers filed up. Maybe call it The Error, or something. And what it comes down to is they all know how to deal with it. Pretty much. They know how to deal with a zombie. Shoot it in the head. They know how to deal with zombie bites. Lack off the limb or shoot the guy in the head. They know how to deal with a lot of stuff. There's the thing. Fire. I guess ice. You can freeze it too. But fire. Oh, that guy was, impregnated by an alien chest burster. Kill him and kill whatever's inside of him. Or, because you don't really see it again, you don't really see it in Wall of Darkness, because there is really no way to not be flush crafted. If you're going to be flush crafted into a piece of lawn furniture, or a bar wall ornament, I don't believe there's a way to reverse that, or to prevent it without killing the guy trying to do it to you. And that's not really solving a body horror. It's, I'm just going to kill the guy. Okay. Well, he's probably has friends of the same clan that have the exact same powers. But now I want to think about players, because there are people that, especially in the fantasy D&D camp, that say if you're gonna roleplay, if you're gonna play a tabletop game, if you're gonna roleplay, you gotta play good guys, or you gotta play heroes. I mean, even what's the name of Super's game where you play villains after all the heroes have been murdered. I think it's Necessary Evil, it's called. Even the villains that survive the hero genocide, once these aliens show up, you're like, oh, okay, we gotta save the world. So that's still a hero's game. Alright, even if you're a scumbag, it's like, well, I don't want them to evaporate Europe, so I guess I can put my evil plans on hold. So if you're playing good guys, your characters don't really get to be involved in much body horror, which comes into my view of role playing, whereas you can play what works for the game and for the story. I mean, I would say if I was running, if I was running a fantasy game, and someone came up to me and said, I want to be a worshiper of the most evil cult in the realm. And I'd, well, you're traveling with a warrior priest and a knight who both kind of don't believe it, and it will probably kill you on sight. Then I'd probably say no. But it's in an urban setting. If it's a World of Darkness, or if it's a Dresden Files, or if it's a supernatural. You want to talk about supernatural, or anything like that? Anything more urban. The more contemporary you get, I believe, especially into the future, you can get away with more evilness or more villainy as part of your character team. And that's debated. People would debate me on that. But if you think about it, back in the olden days, when you want to talk about like the fantasy RPGs, the Skyrims, the Dragon Ages, and the Lord of the Rings and the D&Ds, if you were a bad guy, you were a bad guy. Like there was a price on your head. Anyone who believed things like you did, they were wiped off the face of the earth. You were summoning creatures from the ether and from the oblivion. That whole point was to devour the kingdom and bring about death and destruction. The more contemporary you get, you could be an infernalist. You could want to summon demons to wipe out the earth. And people will play you. Like people want to play Sabbat characters. Fine. Play Sabbat characters. Want to be an infernal? Want to believe the human are cattle? Fine. But we're sort of getting off track. Getting back to the body horror, because a lot of people don't play villains, villains tend to be the ones to unleash the body horror. Very rarely does a human, I don't know why it says human, very rarely does a hero, rather, threaten an enemy with being turned into a piece of lawn furniture, or being assimilated into the thing, or being turned into part of the collective, by means of zombification or Killix. Let's talk about the Star Wars Killix really quick. If you played SOTOR, you know about them. But the Killix are one of those races in science fiction, and even though they're presented for the most part as good guys, just for the hive mind, they can forcibly convert people to join their hive mind. Okay? And you could do that willingly, where you'd be seen as a joiner. But there's a point where they will just take people and go, exposure to their pheromones, alter your brain chemistry, boom, you are now a Killick. Even if you're a human, a Zabrak, a Trandoshan, it doesn't matter, you're a Killick now. That's body horror. Okay? Your body is now just seeing like, oh, being a Killick is great, even if you didn't want to be a Killick in the first place. But heroes never really get into that. So, that leaves body horror, in the camp of either evil campaigns, if you want to take all evil characters and send them out on a campaign, or in the hands of your villains of the campaigns. Or considering body horror is a lot of times just a alien or wizardry or magic. A lot of times they're just the wizards or the underlings that wield the magics. Another thing that's hot in my head, Sith alchemy. Sith alchemy is definitely body horror. If you become a Sith spawn against your will, I keep going back to Star Wars. I keep going back to Star Wars because there's an example of body horror that's probably not going to happen, but it's sort of been sitting in my mind. And I was talking to a group of people about a Star Wars RP. And during the discussion, we brought up the expanded universe, and I guess maybe now non-canon. Yeah, it will be non-canon now. But the expanded universe species of silicon beings, known as shards. And if you know anything about the Iron Knights, you know what shards are. They're little crystals that speak through energy pulses that are sentient, and some of them can be force sensitive. But they're all sentient. Like, they argue amongst themselves in little crystalline formation about what they should do for, like, years. Because they're little crystal creatures. They're not going anywhere. They have no eyes. There's absolutely no features that would tell you they're sentient. And one of my characters, who's a Sith Lord, or actually not a Sith Lord, one of the Sith Lords, he's the head of he's basically the Sith Lord that who is in control, I'm sorry, I yawned, who is in control of sending out all the Imperial Reclamation guys and bringing back artifacts for him to look at. He's like, wouldn't it be, we sort of talked about him taking a shard, a sentient shard, and putting it into a lightsaber. Making it into a lightsaber crystal. So, using Sith alchemy where necessary to smooth out the gaps. And sealing a living creature inside of a weapon that whenever you turned it on, ran energy through the sentient creature, causing unimaginable pain. Okay? For a villain, that's like, that's evil. What if you decide to play a character who is an Iron Knight? Not you, but let's say there was a human that wanted to play a character who is an Iron Knight. Why did I say human? Player. What if there was a player who was playing Star Wars, either G6 or Saga Edition or Freeform or whatever the hell floats your boat, and the GM sort of puts together, like, here's your stats for a shard, and you go, no need, I'll just give him the stats of a Jedi training droid with some better lightsaber combat and force powers, and I'll just throw my gem in the droid. So the Iron Knight is out traveling with everybody else, and you meet the Sith Lord. And the Sith Lord, after defeating the Iron Knight in battle, because unless his entire body is covered in cortosis weave, that droid body is still a droid body, carved out and basically sticks your living shard body into its lightsaber. If you have a playable character, they're not dead. Okay? They might not want to play them anymore, since they're basically just a hood ornament for a guy's lightsaber. But that character, if he decides to roll up a new sheet at that point, that character, because these things can live nearly forever, is going to just be inside this guy's lightsaber. He could die and order his lightsaber entombed in his tomb off, but the shard is still trapped there. It's a prison. That's body horror, if you think about it. It's your body. It's a shard being trapped in this little device and tortured. And there's no way out. So should there be more body horror in games? Yes. But I think it has to be dealt with not within a franchise. Because if you do a Romero zombie-inspired game, if you do a Thing from Another World, if you do Aliens, if you do anything like that, the franchise means people will be familiar with it. It'll be played by the fans, which is how you want it. That's where they want to make their money. But the fans know, as I said, kill the thing with fire, kill the zombies with headshots, or cut off its head, whatever. So, how do you go about creating a new body horror game? And the Gentleman Gamer recently, I name dropped him twice in one video. He was asked recently about what he would do about a new Old World of Darkness setting. And he was talking more about viruses and parasites having to live within a body and sort of hold that moral line that the World of Darkness games have. And I can see that working in World of Darkness. I really can. Because in his own words and in my opinion, we share this opinion, that if you're going to make another old or new World of Darkness setting after mummies, vampires, werewolves, wraiths, Promethean, no, I'm just mixing things from the old and new World of Darkness, going down the list. The thing they don't have is aliens. And they imply them. I believe there's a passage in one of the books on the Fae. Let's talk about the Fae. Might have been one of the Changeling books, now that I think about it. And they talk about, the Fae kidnap people, but that does not account for all of the abductions. And you know why they wrote that. They wrote it that way for aliens. So back on track. Could aliens work for World of Darkness? Yes. Could parasites work? Could an intellect devourer be a protagonist in World of Darkness? That's really what it comes down to. Could an intellect devourer be a protagonist? Is there a walking of the line of a creature that burrows inside of its enemy, or host, I shouldn't say enemy, burrows inside of its host, takes over their mind, literally hijacks them, and in the case of the intellect devourer, eats the brain, so there's no way of going back. Okay, or same thing with a John Carpenter thing. There's probably that much of going back after you become the host of a parasite, of a mind-altering parasite. So, I don't think you could play the protagonist. I mean, because you have to put him on this sort of track of humanity. Just using humanity as the prime example, because I know there's a lot of versions of this throughout the old and new World of Darkness. But you have to sort of balance crazy assimilator who's going to assimilate everything on Earth, and the other side of that is, well, he has a family, and so it's weird, like an intellect devourer would put on the face of, oh yeah, I'm so Bob from next door, trimming the hedges. But it realizes I don't have a lot of time here, and I got to make good use of the time I have. The Thing, I'm going to keep going back to those two examples. The Thing, if you remember the movie or read the book or the horrible comic companions, would sort of realize, okay, I only have so much time here. I'm going to simulate, soldier number 1 in order to get on helicopter B. Then I assimilate helicopter pilot. So after he flies me somewhere, then he drops me in the Amazon, and I assimilate a monkey or a fly, and then I fly out. That's all I need to worry about ever. So those are sort of the ultimate approach for that is continued assimilation. And that would be the evolutionary goal for an organism that evolved with the ability to assimilate life forms. It would be to get more. Like a virus or a parasite, it just wants to get more or infect more. So I don't see how a World of Darkness game can work with a assimilator or a parasite. Per se. I mean, there's a way it can be done. I know a way exists. And considering, especially in Vampire the Masquerade, no one's a good guy. But no one's a good guy in a system that's created because they look human and they decided we can't all just run around and eat people. So, and I don't think there would be this system of rules or codes or cultural traditions that would tell a parasite, you really shouldn't eat that schoolgirl and take over her brain because, she has feelings and future aspirations. But I am not knocking that idea of the setting. I think if you can come up with any body horror setting for World of Darkness, old or new, preferably old, I mean, that's a great idea. That's a great idea. That's the only thing that seems to be missing from the World of Darkness. Because you could, into certain ideas, you could sort of retro fit. Like, I remember I took the Jersey Devil from Urban Legends in the New World of Darkness, and I made a old World of Darkness version of it. So you could do something like that, and that's something that really, that would be a new player, quite literally. But that'd be a new player in the World of Darkness to have a body horror element, because World of Darkness is unique among RPG, because it's scoped out this universe with different forms of vampire the masquerade, werewolf, and so on. And the usual way, especially if you're a hunter, the usual way to deal with vampire A or werewolf B or changeling C is you kill it. You fight it, you kill it. And incendiary rounds, whatever the hell it takes, you kill it. You can't really, killing something that assimilates or takes over bodies isn't really that effective, because if it's an intellect devourer, it'll just crawl out of the head, or if it's a worm, it'll crawl out of the ear, and go somewhere else. Do a stealth roll and get away. If it's the thing, if you're not using fire, it's not going to work. And for vampires, very rarely do vampires keep fire around. Unless you're a Tremere with the Path of Flames. A Tremere with Path of Flames would be very helpful in a John Carpenter's The Thing situation. But otherwise, the Parasite provides a whole different way of winning these fights. Because if you're possessing, John at the bar, and a vampire bites you, let's say an Athomite jumps down from on high and feeds off of you, there's a chance that vampire might immediately recognize, oh shit, there's something wrong, and just back up and like, oh shit. Or there's a chance that it would be too late. Just the piercing of the flesh, exposure to the blood, exposure to the cells. Guess what? The Athomite has now joined the hive mind that is the old World of Darkness thing from another world. And you could tell that player, yeah, you're dead. But that's sort of a dick move if it's just presented as just someone around, like hiding this within someone. So that's why I think it hasn't been done. If you want to get down to sort of the conclusion of this video, or recording rather, why isn't there more body horror? Body horror is a death nail to a character, as I sort of alluded to with the shard trapped in the lightsaber. To continue with the Athomite thing comparison, if you're playing an Athomite or anything like that, especially a Ventru, no, let's change that to Ventru, considering the feeding specialty of a Ventru. And a Ventru, I'm sorry, I hit the mic. A Ventru, as you all should know, and if you don't know, here it is, has a flaw of feeding specialties. They need to have a certain requirement to feed, which means they either have to get for blonde-haired people or virgins or people with adrenaline rushes or stuff like that. It varies on the ST and what they're willing to approve. But if you're playing either on the tabletop or maybe on the Saligia forum, eventually that can only feed off people with two different color eyes. It's called something, but again, I don't have any notes in front of me. And you finally find one in John, the bartender, who just went outside to have a smoke when the piano was not playing. That's a reference to something. If you catch what that's a reference to and put it in the comments, I'll mention it in the next video. So, and the Ventru comes down and bites him, and he's infected by something, anything that would translate and take over another creature, that adventurer is now dead. Okay? Not torpor, not jumping back and going, ah! I don't know why I made that sound. But dead. The adventurer is dead simply because he bit into an alien. Okay? And that's dead. So you say, oh, you bit, you got 4 successes on your hold and bite roll against the human with the 2 different color eyes. I roll the bite. Okay, you roll the bite. You pierce his neck. You feel something poisonous and caustic go down your throat as you feed, and you drop dead. And suddenly, control of your body seems to shift. You seem to no longer have control of what you can do. Everything starts to fade out slowly, and you die. The creature now in control of your body simply strolls away into the darkness in order to learn the abilities of the host that it now took over. That's death. Okay? That's final death. I'm not sure if the creature wouldn't last very long, considering the second it starts walking out in daylight, it's going to burst into flames and turn into ash and break the last grade, technically. But unless its biology can fix that, maybe. That way we get this superpowered vampire with none of the weaknesses. But, I mean, it's the same thing if you play an Aliens game. If you get impregnated by a chest hugger, face hugger, damn it. If you get impregnated by a face hugger which produces a chest burster, you're dead. I mean, the movie, the primary canon, shows us the chest burster equals death. The thing from another world. If you're infected, you're dead. You're gone. You're in the cave, Wilford Brimley style, building a UFO. You're gone. It's not you anymore. And that's why I don't think it appears very much. Because as much as we want, as DMs or STs, to see our enemies defeat the players, to see the Sith Lord win, to see the cult summon Cthulhu, so on and so forth, to have the wizard, destroy Tamriel, or summon, or to have the dragons burn Skyrim to a crisp. As much as we'd like to see that, we also want to see them win, so we can throw them something else next week or next month. Because the old rule, even in Call of Cthulhu, your goal isn't to kill your players. You want to drive them insane, so they start shitting like in a box in the corner of a padded room the rest of their life. But killing them is this, you got all this work. That's why you don't see a lot of body horror. Because unless it's contrived and not well written, there is really no way to come back from being hit by something that's really horrific. Like a parasite or assimilation or something like that. And if that exists in World of Darkness, I mean, not even as a book, but even as an enemy. Like, imagine if John Carpenter's The Thing existed in World of Darkness. And you don't have its premiere with the path of flames or a hunter with a flamethrower. How fast does that spread? I mean, this thing, if you're familiar with the dog that assimilates in the movie and some of the comics, it takes over a baby seal, a wounded seal, and therefore it can live underwater unaided. So what we notice from these kind of organisms in fiction is they're kind of the ultimate organism. You can't kill them unless it's under certain circumstances. So a thing version of a vampire might be immune to the sun. Might be immune to stakes. Actually, it would be immune to stakes. So you sort of see why you can't introduce these kind of things that can simply roll dice. Oh, you got all your successes, but because of the thing you fed off of by accident, you're dead. It's hard. So going back to the original thing that I spoke of, why it isn't in roleplay games very much is because it's overkill in a lot of points. It's OP. It's the enemy that can kill you and you can't kill them. I'm sorry if you didn't hear that because I yawned. It's the enemy that can kill you and you can't kill them. And you have to go through trial and error to figure out how to kill it. Definitely an urban environment. For a vampire, it might be more easy to figure it out. His vampire's weakness is fire. But what if it was a werewolf? What if it was a werewolf? What if it was, you want to go into the fantasy one, what if it was an ogre or a troll taken over by an intellect devourer? What if it was a lich? Or something. Or anything that for whatever reason has become infected or taken over by a foreign entity that has now changed the rules of the game. That is what makes it hard, and why it doesn't really exist a lot, in my opinion. Most of the body horror games you do see, as I said earlier, are zombie games. Okay? Especially with The Walking Dead's popularity and how popular the Romero zombies are, and what's the name? It's the... I'm sorry, I yawned again. It's the what's the name of the zombie books? All Flesh Must Be Eaten, and all them. Even if you're playing like the wrestling spin-off of All Flesh Must Be Eaten, there's a body horror element in there. It's mostly tongue-in-cheek parody, but there is a body horror element in there. Especially if you go into some of the other books. For All Flesh Must Be Eaten, where you get like international zombies from all over the world, and zombies that explode boomer style with acid, or that drain your life force, or so on and so forth. Body horror, what you can really get with body horror, outside of the Romero zombie genre, the best way to play it, and this is going to sound weird, but everyone likes to play vampires. A lot of people like to play vampires from the get-go. I am a 9th-gen Ventru, born in the Renaissance, that in my multiple centuries of life, have extensively studied history, academia, and the occult. Okay, here you go. Not many people want to say, I was embraced yesterday. And I just stopped frenzying about an hour ago. And now I need to be explained exactly what happened to me. That's the closest you get to body horror in World of Darkness. Being a human and then being bitten by something that you were always told was a myth, was a fairy tale, something that doesn't exist. And next thing you know, you're among them, and now you're basically told, if you go to your family, they're going to roast you alive. It's very, very difficult to roleplay, or even to roleplay with, if you want to think of it that way, a brand new vampire in a lot of aspects. Because you have to be like, oh, how do I do this? How do I do that? And then they're sort of dealing with the trauma. It doesn't happen much because body horror is hard. Playing body horror is hard. Beating body horror is hard or near impossible. Can it be done? Sure. You can, I've had people mention Call of Cthulhu is a lot of body horror, but it's in a genre of itself. That's why I haven't really mentioned it. But you could really, I've heard people say, and I wouldn't do it, but I've heard things like, oh, you could put anything in World of Darkness if you wanted to. Anything. There's no rules. You want to have them meet a Lovecraftian cult? Fine. You know, you want to have your vampires or your hunters having to deal with a cult trying to worship an outer god or an elder god? Fine. Do it. I think you can get more into it with the hunters than anyone else in terms of body horror, if you're going to do it. But that's really what it comes down to. I mean, that's what I have to say. If you're going to do a body horror a body horror game that isn't zombies, you gotta really do it on your own. You can't really put it in a franchise, in my opinion. You would really have to go out on a limb and create your own world and your own rules, really. Because you could build the ultimate organism. Okay? You could build the ultimate organism that requires no food or water. All it needs to do is move from planet to planet, assimilating all life and moving on. That's fine. Make it invincible. That's not a game. If you're going to put one of these things in a game, in its own game, there has to be a chink in the armor. The players have to find out. I know it could be its only weakness is an element that could be found within distant comets that have circled dead stars. Like crazy stuff like that. But if you're in a little spaceship, that works. Like, okay, you guys go hold off, the thing that used to be John, and I'm just going to find that comet for us. But it really has to be its own game. Because if you play it within a franchise, a body horror franchise, people are going to metagame the rules. And if they're not going to metagame the rules, they're going to metagame the scenarios as much as possible, as much as they can, until they can figure out the rules. Okay? And if it's in with a franchise that doesn't usually have it, like World of Darkness, its introduction throws things in a loop so much that we are left with an overpowered entity that can simply kill your Ventrue just for feeding on it. So it has to be its own. It has to be its own. It has to have its own rules, and it has to be different. You got to put your own spin on it, or else people just say, "Oh, you're just making a depowered version of the Thing, or an Intellect Devourer, or the T-Virus, or whatever." And you know what? Let that be the question. Let that be the comment question for like the 5 of you that are going to reply. How about this? How would you make a body horror game? And I'm not saying how you would introduce body horror into a game. What would be your rules for how you would set up an entity designed off of body horror, and the multitude of them that I explained in an example, into your game, in terms of it being, if you had to write a game, any system, but it's your game, it's not part of a franchise, that has to be based around a body horror element that isn't really based off any franchise, so that takes out zombies and vampires. How would you do it? I'm curious. And much like if you cast the earlier John at the Bar piano reference, the one that I like the best, that's really subjective, but the one that I think really catches it the best or that impresses me, I'll mention the idea and the person who said it, your YouTube username, in the next video. And we'll see how that goes. But as I said, hopefully this is the beginning of more content coming out quickly. Not quickly, but in more manageable or in timely chunks. I'm Gaius. This has been Gaius Grimoire, and thanks for watching.